City University Television presents the American Theater Wing Seminars. Working in the theater. This seminar, performance.
A warm welcome to the American Theater Wing's Working the Theater Seminars, now in their 30th year and coming to you from the Graduate Center at the City University of New York. Professionals are brought together by the American Theater Wing for these seminars to help provide an insight to what it's like to work in the theater. Today's seminar is with 5 leading performers, each of them starring on Broadway in a role originated by someone else. We hope to learn not only about their approach to this special undertaking and their preparation, but what it takes in energy, passion, and temperament in order to succeed. I'm Isabel Stevenson, Chairman of the Board of the American Theater Wing, and so now let me introduce our moderator for the seminar, President of the Dramatists Guild, Tony, Oscar, and Emmy Award-winning playwright, Peter Stone. Peter.
Thank you, Isabel. This is a fascinating subject because there isn't a playwright or a producer who doesn't spend a lot of time at this idea. It only happens with successful shows. You don't replace actors in unsuccessful shows. The show itself gets replaced. Or unless there's some act of God on the 3rd week where someone gets hit by a taxi. Not taxi. Sorry, it happened right there. But it's a very complicated thing because roles are originated and get identified with. Now, normally, in all the shows I've done, when there's been no star name involved, the replacement is a very smooth operating thing, and you replace with very good actors. And when you've got a star vehicle, where you're part really identified with a star, it's very difficult. Because for audiences, you sometimes have to reproduce the level of stardom to get them to still come, if the show's very, very identified. Well, here are 5 examples of good luck for shows because they've all been replaced very, very successfully. And we're going to talk about that. Matter of fact, there are 2, Stephen and Brad, who work together. Steve Weber is someone I've known peripherally. He was in I met him. We had dinner the last time I saw him, and it was very pleasant. And he's an actor, though, who's been in stage and screen and television. Once and Again is the latest series, but Wings is sort of where he gained his original popularity. But he is now, of course, Leo Bloom in The Producers and doing exceptionally well. Marilu Henner is someone I've known for a long time. We've worked together for many years, just coincidentally. We've done stage, we've done television, all sorts of things. And Marilu is now on Broadway in the tale of the Allergist's wife. Is that right? Right. The fellow sitting on my left, you're right, Hal Linden. Hal is a star of every medium, and his television, I mean, we all know Barney Miller, but he won a Tony on Broadway doing The Rothschilds. He's been in everything else, and he is now playing a wonderful part in Cabaret. Richard Kind, I don't know that you've ever been on the stage in New York before. It's not in your bio.
All over New York. It's
really? Yeah, but Spin City was such an enormous. I mean, that was such an enormous hit, and that's you have a memorable face to start with, and being on a series that is very successful even doubles and triples that. Brad Oscar has one of the more interesting stories here because he rose through the ranks, so to speak. He was in the original production of Producers. He was nominated for a Tony. He was just fabulous in it. Went through the whole very sloppy thing that happened with replacement star being selected and then rejected within about 11 minutes, and it was not a happy thing and should not have happened. But all things work out well, because Brad, who had played the part probably more often than the star. So we're going to start over here with over here on this side with Stephen. First of all, let me ask you what it's like to take over a part that is identified with someone and make it yours.
Well, I have to say that in spite of everybody reminding me constantly about how big the shoes were that I was about to fill and how much pressure there was, I really never felt any of that. I was just personally so enthralled to be involved in this production that I didn't care about being nervous or being pressured, and I just more or less enjoyed myself through the whole process. I mean, there are my philosophy is to just if I'm replacing somebody, just to keep the train, the juggernaut of this show moving, and not slow it down for my own personal, process. In many ways, not to speak ill of the dead. In Henry Goodman's case, I think he's the type of actor that wants to very much start from scratch and make it his own. And I don't think in this case that was the best way of going about it. For me, I just wanted to get on this moving train and rip off as much of Matthew Broderick's performance as I could, and in a way to keep everybody moving, to keep the momentum of this show going, and hopefully over time make it my own, by virtue of the fact that we're physical type, that we're different physically and we're different people. It will be different, but I think it's the responsibility in this show, I guess, to not make it about you, but to make it about the show, to keep the show.
But while you've been identified with comedy, I mean, both of your television things were comedies. This is not the kind of comedy audiences knew you for. So to that extent, it's not. We haven't seen you do this kind of comedy too often.
Well, I suppose. I mean, I just have to say that I perhaps haven't been given the opportunity to do something like this, and that tells me that there are many actors, even ones that we're very familiar with, who are limited by how the audience perceives them, from being in shows, from being in Taxi, from being in Spin City. Nobody knows that, or Barney Miller, that nobody knows that people can maybe sing or dance, or that they've had training that allows them to do that.
That's an interesting point you brought up, because when I had started on Broadway, I had done 3 Broadway shows before I even got Taxi. And when I went into Chicago years later, after having been on Taxi and Evening Shade and done a lot of movies and stuff, somebody wrote a letter, another fellow actor wrote a letter saying, how dare they bring in a sitcom star, blah, blah, blah. And I actually had more experience than she had on Broadway. And it was so strange to me, because I had always thought of myself as more of a Broadway actress than a sitcom. And it's sometimes you get pigeonholed that way, and it's up to us, excuse me, and our agents, and staying on top of things to stay connected enough to the Broadway community to be able to come back and know what you would be right for.
Can I speak?
Are you allowed to speak? What do we think? Let's have a vote in the audience. Everyone really? Okay. All right. Okay. Fair enough.
What happens to the rest of the cast? How do you fit in?
Well, yeah, I believe it or not, I was going to get to that. But the fact is that I wanted to get everybody's opening statement. But we can get to that now, because she owns the hall. So we can.
Okay.
Yes, so we can. We're going to get to that.
Okay.
We're going to about fitting in with the rest of the cast, about the director and the stage manager, all of that. We are going to get to that. I just
A lot of tension on this panel.
None whatsoever.
A lot of anger.
None whatsoever. Anyway, but you have replaced now 4 times.
4 times. Actually, what's interesting, I've been on Broadway 6 times. I created a role, and actually there was a role I created in the original Grease. I didn't do the original company on Broadway because I was just starting college at the time, and my father had passed away, so I didn't want to come to New York. But then I went out on the national company, so I came in to, and somebody else was kind of doing my part. So I I guess I replaced somebody who had replaced me, something like that anyway. But yes, I replaced Marlo Thomas in Social Security many years ago. I also replaced Annie Reinking in Chicago, and I'm recently replacing Michelle Lee in Tale of the Allergist Wife.
How soon we forget.
Yes. Yes, and then with Annie Get Your Gun, I had seen Bernadette's performance, and because she and I were so different, I'm such a different physical type, and also Bernadette's the kind of person that has people sort of more away from her, and I'm like somebody who grabs people, punches them, all this. I wanted to recreate the show, so when we did the First National Company, they started from the very beginning and did so many different things and added dancing, because I'm a dancer. So they tailor-made it for me, and actually Reba came and watched our show a few times and ended up doing that show on Broadway.
But Bernadette never had an exercise tape.
No, that's true.
I promised I would, two things I wouldn't mention. Exercise tape and John Travolta.
Oh,
anyway, so
as long as you mention no dairy, I don't care. But with coming into Tale of the Allergist's Wife, we were very lucky. Richard and I and Rhea Perlman, we came in together as a company. There are 5 people in the show. All 5 of us started together. We got to start from you don't want to say ground zero anymore. From square one. You don't want to, from square one.
Good.
And it was the 5 of us working together for 4 weeks. So we got to really break it down and do different things and find our own rhythms. And also because our cast was a little bit younger, the writer came in and made changed some of the dialogue, changed some of the references. Charles Bush,
who's
of course,
wonderful,
brilliant writer. And
actor. That's interesting too. When a writer is as talented an actor as Charles is.
Right. Came in and changed some of the references and everything else. And I think for me, just like Stephen mentioned, you want to keep the train going, no question about it. But you know that, being so different than the people I've replaced, I knew that a certain energy, a certain way I look, et cetera, was always going to be sort of flesh out that character for me. And you're just so happy to have the job, and you want to honor the piece, but you want to also give it your little special stamp. So you find those little ways of doing it, especially if you study your part well enough and learn your dances and your song and your lines. Then you can start tweaking it with all your little special ingredients.
But that's an interesting point too. That it was in the case of Brad and Stephen. They moved into a cast that had one eyebrow raised. Go ahead, we've been here. Let's see what you're going to do. In this case, it was like a pro football team. The defense coming in after the offense, the whole new squad came in. And that's an interesting thing.
It's the best way to do it.
I've
done it both ways.
But it's not unfortunately it's not your decision. So now, on the other hand, Hal, who has done this everything. You were on the stage long before your television hit. I joked with him earlier. He was on. That's because when he started, there was no television. But nevertheless, one big part after another. But and then of course the big success. And now here you are again. Back on Broadway in these roles. Tell me, you've done both. You've originated roles many times, and you've replaced, as you've done on the last 2 Kander and Ebb shows that are running, and others as well. Tell us a little bit.
I don't find the process any different. That is the actual process of decision making any different. The best way is indeed when you replace with an entire cast. When you come in and you work together. I did that in Sisters Rosenzweig. I did that in Cabaret. All of us came at the same time, and we worked together on the scenes. Yes, the staging is set, so it's something like putting on somebody else's suit, and as you work your way on it, you take up the sleeves a little, take in the waist till it fits. But that's true anyway. One doesn't have free rein on the stage when one creates a role. You still have a writer and a director saying, do it this, how about this, and try this. And so, but the actual process is the same. You still start from scratch every time. You still start.
Had you seen the original role?
I saw the original production in 67, something like that.
Did you see Ron do it?
How's that?
Did you see Ron do it in this?
Ron Rifkin in the...
No, I didn't see
the original production.
I saw the original production with...
with Joel and
Jack Guilford.
Jack Guilford, right.
Right, exactly.
Which was quite different.
Right.
Quite different.
Different people.
And Mrs. Kurt Weill.
And Mrs. Kurt Weill.
Exactly.
Right.
Anyway.
No, I had never seen it. Now, here again, you start with somebody else's suit. You're going to come in this door. You're going to leave it open. You're going to say your lines here, basically. But given that's just the passageway. Once you get on, you got to be you. You got to be a human being. You got to do all the work that it takes to originate a role. You got to have all the study, all the background. You got to know the politics of the year. You got to know the social climate that we're talking about. Very big in the relationship between the two characters.
It's really interesting that Stephen and Brad came into not just replacing Nathan and Matthew, but, dare I say it, replacing Zero and Gene.
Yeah.
I didn't even mention their last names. That's how
You
dare
don't
I
have to.
say it.
That's how big they are.
But, I mean, those are shoes to fill as well.
It's true, although not many of us alive remember that. But no. but that was it's quite true. But nevertheless, a film. Wasn't like it's a revival where there was on the stage Alfred Drake or Mary Martin.
Right.
It was a film, and when I did Sugar, which was Some Like It Hot, there was the ghost of Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis and so forth. But there was never that comparison. Well, first of all, it was Bobby Morse and Tony. And it's one degree of separation, of our life. Because here he is now with the ghost of Tony Robbins.
Yeah, now when I'm, when we're doing Tale of the Allergist's Wife, which was a piece that was in essence, I'm talking to Charles, written specifically for Linda Lavin.
Right.
So can you imagine what kind of trouble Valerie had to go into, had to do with a piece that was written specifically for somebody, and then Rhea having to go into that. It was not written specifically for Tony, I don't believe, but he was in the rehearsal and everything like that. But Tony always said that he felt that he was serving not just the play, but serving Linda a lot of times. And when he left, he gave me the best piece of direction. He just said, "Love your wife," and that was like an eye opener. He just said, "Love her." I said, "You will not
in the
come off
play
as-"
he's talking
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in life too, but yeah.
You keep their income too.
Not Tony's wife either.
But that was such a wonderful thing. So through the creative process, he got to learn that thing because he was there when Charles and Lynn were writing and rewriting. So that's a wonderful thing. Like Hal said, going in and the staging is all set. Then there were times where I said, I just wouldn't move there. Why am I sitting on the couch there? I mean, I hate to say it. What is my motivation to sit on the couch there? Well, it's our job then to make up a motivation to sit on the couch, because that's what the lighting director has designed, that's what the director has set down, that this is what you do. So
it becomes like a Swiss watch that fits together a certain way, and if you change it, then everything else right after that.
When Herb Ross was making the film of Sunshine Boys, there was an actor playing the young agent who said, "Why do I go into the kitchen at this point?" He says, "Well, because the author wants so soon to be alone." He said, "But why do I go in the kitchen?" And Herb thought about it. He says, "You're right, you can't go in the kitchen. The actor that has your job is in the kitchen." All right. Brad, in many cases, Nathan being as extravagant seems on the surface to be a tough act, but certainly the role you played, even in the beginning, was very extravagant. I mean, it's very over the top, which of course, in a way, one of the reasons I think that Nathan and Matthew have not somehow is because Mel Brooks was the star of the show in an odd way, and therefore, what you're doing is moving from Mel to the audience rather than through Nathan. So you've got his stuff, but nevertheless, you've got to but being that you were understudying it and had played it so often, had to have made the whole transition easier.
Yes, it did. I mean, I went into the kitchen because certainly when I was going on for Nathan, it was my job to be there for Matthew in the ways that he had gotten used to 8 times a week. So it wasn't my job to come in and reinvent the wheel at all. And certainly, again, watching that force of nature and seeing what Nathan did 8 times a week, that gave me an amazing shell to work within. And when I went on as an understudy, I certainly did my best not to imitate Nathan, although I know, throughout my career, I have reminded people of Nathan. I will sound like Nathan. That is what it is. That got me to where I am with this production right now, I believe, coming in to stand by for him. But then when Stephen and I started working together and I actually took over the role, and both Mel Brooks and Susan Stroman were very supportive and encouraging for both of us to make it our own and to not feel that we had to fill those bits. And we actually got rid of certain things that didn't necessarily work organically for us. And we started to, create our own thing. It was difficult for me because I had the echoes of that original, all that stuff that had been created in the rehearsal hall and then was put on
Because you weren't
stage.
just standing by, you were on the stage in another part.
Correct. Right.
The same,
So
you
yeah, I mean, I was pretty in touch with exactly what was going on, and the mechanics, of the evening. The great thing is, I think every actor prays for material like this, a show that is so well written and designed and everything directed and choreographed, that you have that amazing support system. You do not have to work to make it work. You just have to go out there and fill it and live it and breathe it. And and so these last couple months now that we've been able to do that without, again, this idea of we can't worry about being replacements. That has absolutely nothing to do with our job.
That's faded in everybody's mind except the few that kind of bring it up for, I don't know, interview purposes, I suppose, but because really,
like today,
I didn't want to name names,
but it is discussing the mechanics of it, which is a different thing. I don't think we're good. Now, Isabel, now's the time. I want that question to this panel now.
Now, I want to know what happens when the announcement is made in the audience that the role of so-and-so is now being taken over by, and you hear that, oh.
Oh, well, that's an understudy's problem, and these aren't understudies, and, although I'm sure they all have understudies.
They have it.
Well, first of all,
well,
I think Brad had the toughest role, because there he was understudying Nathan, and so the nights that Nathan wasn't there, but it's in the program, it's out front, the people there sort of know it.
But you still get the moment.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you
I'm
this,
used to hearing that low groan. Anyway.
That's what
Usually at the curtain call, isn't it?
I'll tell you this.
Now we know why we separated.
It's high praise.
Yeah.
I was in a show. I was the understudy to Sidney Chaplin in Bells Are Ringing, and went on, and 3 days later, Judy Holliday was out with the same thing. They had both leads gone. You want to talk about a moment?
Oh my God! Well, in 2 by 2, but Danny Kaye used to come on the
Harry Goss had to go on, and for him, he played the oldest son, and Harry went on for him. And Harry was a very, very good understudy. Harry had replaced Zero before, in Fiddler. And Harry was in some way, this is going to sound like heresy, or in this case, heresy. Harry was a better Tevye for one reason. His imitation was so super, was so complete, and he didn't fool around like Zero did. Because Zero was a terrible fooler around, a genius, but he fooled around. So Harry was a wonderful, but when he went with Danny Kaye, Zero was, while a star, not a household word. Danny Kaye was an icon. He did his best to do away with that. But the fact was that when Harry went on, if you were standing in the aisle, you could have been trampled by people leaving to get their money back.
And when I saw 2 by 2, there was an announcer that came on, tonight the part of Noah, normally played by Danny Kaye, will be played by Danny Kaye. It was him making the announcement. And that's what it was. And you could hear they go, like that.
That was the most responsible ad-lib ever. But
Peter,
yes.
Is the playwright involved in the replacement?
Yes. They're not involved obviously in the ensemble replacements, but yes. First of all, playwrights have, thanks to the Dramatists Guild, approval of cast. So you cannot replace the cast or without the playwright's approval. Now, a lot of playwrights are busy with another play or busy doing something else, or they're gone, and they trust the director or they trust the producer. But playwrights should take an interest, and as I always have, and I think most of the people who have been in it for a long time do take an interest.
Our creative people all came back, John. And
well, because that leads to the next question. Were all of you put in by the director, not the stage manager? Well, with you, it was different because you'd done it all that time. You're always the exception here today.
Yeah.
Because you had done
But
it
yes,
differently.
indeed, though. But we
Susan
did have
came-
rehearsals together. Oh, yes.
Susan came and put you
Oh,
in.
yeah. And they still come every month and a half, every 2 months. They both show up, which is great.
Just last night, I had 2 pages of typewritten notes.
From the director, not the stage manager.
From the stage manager, but
right,
he,
through the-
he sort of channels the director.
It
Such
changes.
as?
It's different.
Give me an
Notes
example.
such as?
Yeah.
One was, don't fool around in the wings. Okay?
Love your wife.
Yeah, love your wife. Love Tony Roberts' wife. They had to do with most of them I thought were very valid.
Stage
and-
department.
Yes.
That,
and,
the stage managers care about that. They,
Well,
they
but
run
What's in
off
the
stage.
report?
They
Yeah.
do.
Well, because I think they have by virtue of the profession they've chosen, they think in a very linear fashion.
Yeah.
They manage the stage, and they want to prevent things from going berserk. And in the show that we do, it has a tendency. Everybody in the show
Yeah.
has a tendency to want to do just that. So I mean, there are people in the quote-unquote ensemble. And I say quote-unquote because they're all amazing actors in their own right. They're not just background people who have made these small roles, these kind of peripheral roles, comedic highlights in this show, and it's a real, and
So
and
cut it out.
So stop it, stop it, you hammy bastards.
To eliminate the improvements.
Well, that's it.
Everyone
Exactly,
knows
the
that Wednesday's a matinee day, but what you don't know is
Yeah.
that Tuesday is an understudy day, and that's when the stage manager does rehearsals, usually on most musicals.
But we have it Thursday.
You're on Thursday. But
Used to be Saturday morning in my day.
I know, but
Before
fortu-
television, right?
and before the union. But so it is the director in all cases here.
No.
Oh,
No, I was put in by the stage manager. Our director was off doing some picture. I forget which one.
Sam Mendes.
Yes.
He made the final Hope Crosby picture, The Road to Perdition. Yes.
Road to
Yeah. Final.
Dorothy Lamour as Perdition.
That's right. That's right. The very last.
It varies with the
I'm seeing
situation.
a little bit of confusion among some people who don't know who Hope Crosby was. But on the other hand, that's what happens when you get a young audience.
Hope Lang and Bob
Sometimes
Crosby.
we were lucky.
We were really
We were
lucky.
lucky because I think Lynn at first thought she was just going to come at the beginning, and then she ended up spending so much time with us because we all became so close. So we were very lucky, and she was.
She
at
made
every
a phone
rehearsal.
call saying, "Don't worry, I'm going to be around." You did, before we even started rehearsal, you're going to be directed. It's not just a put in. And like Marilu said, she really was there, even when she was doing business at Manhattan Theater Club, whose
Right.
offices were where the rehearsal space was. She would find herself coming down and staying for an hour and then 2 hours,
Right.
and really working us.
Yeah.
And then we would just go through it with the stage manager when she was not available.
And also, we had four weeks, which is very rare when you replace in a comedy or a drama. You usually get 2 weeks, which is what I had for Social Security, and 4 weeks for a musical. What did you?
Yeah.
Did you guys have 4 weeks?
I
You
had
had
2
2
weeks.
weeks. See?
Oh, ours
And
was
we had
it was
4
a
weeks.
blessing.
But
It
I'll
was
tell
a
you, I thought
blessing.
we should have moved to the stage sooner, just a little.
Well,
bit sooner.
I'll tell you this. When we were rehearsing, we had the stage manager, his assistant, the director, and an intern, all of whom had seen the play 600 times. And nobody saw us rehearse. I thought we were doing a very pleasant little comedy, maybe a drama even. I had no idea what we were doing. 4 weeks and not a laugh. Not a laugh. And Tuesday night, when we opened, having never run through it on stage, never
That's
ran
what I'm
through it, certainly not with costumes, never ran through it. On Tuesday night, we found out we were funny. It was, who the hell knew? I'm telling you, it was who the hell knew.
Well, Lynn, we should identify Lynn as Lynn Meadow, who's not just a wonderful director and a marvelous lady, but she's also the head of the Manhattan Theater Club,
Yeah,
which is
she's-
one of the more valuable.
She's fantastic.
She's one of,
Yeah.
really one of
Fantastic.
the most valuable theatrical establishments in the city.
It's also great when a director or choreographer works with you and they find something that specifically looks good on your body or your movement or your voice or whatever. When I went in for Anne Reinking in Chicago, Annie and I are very different. I mean, first of all, she's an icon dancer and everything else. So, but Annie worked with me and she made sure that all the steps looked great on me, and and they changed some of the vocal arrangements because my voice is high. higher and stuff like that. And when they tweak for you, you can, it's not just a question of replacing somebody and doing a carbon copy, you know, cookie cutter version. It's a question of really showing you off to your best advantage, which ultimately helps the piece. And I'm sure that that's...
I've always found dancers to be the most generous in this regard. They really are very, very generous about... I know when I did the film of Sweet Charity, Gwen Verdon had played it on stage, and she wasn't going to be able to play it on screen. They wanted a movie star, and when Shirley MacLaine got it, she just... Now, granted, she was... by this time the ex-wife of the director, but nevertheless, it was her decision to go along and do work with Shirley the entire way and to give her. But when it was her part, it must have been very difficult. But dancers are very generous, and choreographers are so cruel. I don't understand it. They're so mean to their dancers, and the dancers seem to like it.
It's that discipline. It's that focus. It's that, you know, you like it.
Has anyone ever replaced Hal Linden?
Oh, sure. Has anyone ever replaced you? Of course.
Anybody?
Yeah. In the Rothschilds, you were
Rothschilds?
replaced. Yes, and...
Who took over for you in the Rothschilds?
Actually, I closed it on Broadway, but who took it out on the road? The opera singer. What was his name? Jan Pierce. Jan Pierce.
Jan Pierce. Oh, that's it.
I'm very good. Wow. I did not theater. I will tell you a great, it's sort of like an understudy story, but when Anthony Quinn and Marlon Brando were doing Viva Zapata, Anthony Quinn took Streetcar on the road. So they hated, in Viva Zapata, there had to be a real rivalry. And Elia Kazan used to go up to each one and go, I hear everybody thinks Brando was a better Stanley. He was and then he would go up to Brando going, Anthony Quinn, they all say, was a better Stanley. And they hated each other on that film because of that.
Kazan was famous for getting actors to take certain emotions by fooling with their offstage personalities. Yeah. He did that a lot.
Like a choreographer.
Telling them their dog was dead.
Yeah, that's sort of
really.
Yeah, he was bad about that. Anyway, the whole talk about now the difference between creating your difference as an actor between you did touch on it before, but creating a role and recreating a role. In other words, is the method different?
As I said before, I don't think it's different. I personally don't. The only thing is that you do have prior directions, as it were. If you were creating a role, you would be taking the director's directions. You now have set directions. They're already there. But the actual acting work that has to be done, the actual relationship work that has to be accomplished, the actual study of the context of the play, and all the things that you do when you create a role, you have to do when you recreate a role.
And it's nice that when you get to the point where you are coming into a project, you've missed a lot of the messy part. You've missed all that, hit and miss, try and fail, whatever. I mean, obviously when Stephen and I assumed these roles, we were going into a well-oiled machine.
That's a good point.
I also think that, this is what we have to work with. This is it. I have my body, my voice, my persona, whatever. And so I think it's very important, especially when you are coming into a project that has been so highly regarded, or people may be thinking in terms of another actor in that role, to trust what you have and to trust that, you know what, hopefully I'm smart enough and hopefully I'm good enough, and if I'm not, hopefully other people will help me and tell me, and bring that.
But also, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, but in our case, people were extremely generous. I really feel that audiences were cognizant of this big change, and especially with the controversial aspects of it in the beginning, went with Henry. But they've been extremely, if not forgiving, they've been very enthusiastic and have embraced it. And Mel Brooks has been equally generous and embracing, as have the producers of the producers. So they quickly dispelled with any possible pressure or fear. I think it's all been very respectful and good.
There's a funny story. When we did the reading of the
Just tell the story. We'll let you know if it's
right.
We'll give you a thumbs up. Yeah. Thumbs down. All right.
Okay. We did the reading of the play. Lynn said she wanted me to see Tony do the role. We did the reading of the play, and she said, "It's okay. You don't have to see it. You're going your own journey. You're terrific." 2 weeks into rehearsal, she goes, "I want you to see Tony do it." Okay. So I go, "Oh, please don't make me see him do it. I saw it when it was in its early incarnation at Manhattan Theater Club. He's already in my head. I know what he's doing. Please don't make me see it again." She says, "I just want you to see this one part. Okay, it's at 9:25. Go watch him do that." I got there at 9:20, and I'm watching for 5 minutes, and I learned volumes from what he was doing. The part that she wanted me to see, I learned volumes because I didn't like what he was doing. I said, I can't grasp on that. I'll do it my own way. But the things that I learned that 5 minutes before, and I couldn't see the rest of the play, I wouldn't see it. But honestly, his reactions, how he was, little gestures, and it was amazing. It was amazing. But I didn't want to see him do it. You know what I mean?
Getting back to your
We'll
question.
give him an up on that. Yeah, all right. Okay. Well, go ahead.
Getting back to your question about when you create something, the one show that I did on Broadway, which only was during the run and nobody came in afterwards, and then the show's never been revived or anything else, was a show called Over Here with the Andrews sisters.
Bob and Dick Sherman.
Bob and Dick Sherman, yes, and Will Holt wrote the book, and it was the Andrews sisters and Janie Sell won a Tony, and actually Treat Williams, John Travolta, Annie Reinking, and I were all the young kids in it. So we all created our parts and everything else, and it was a real experience where you went to Philadelphia to go for 3 weeks, and they finally honed it, and and it was like my first Broadway experience, and it was really something for me. But creating a part, you always feel that responsibility. Oh, I have these lines, I have to make them work because otherwise they're going to get cut. Oh, this is my big musical number, I better make this work.
Well,
Otherwise
see,
it's
that's
gonna
what he was talking about.
So you feel
during the process when there were still changes to be made.
yeah,
which is what
when
you
you
were
do
talking
change,
about.
when you create something from scratch, and you're with the company creating it from scratch, including the producer, director, writers, everybody, there's always that responsibility of how do we make this piece the best it can be, and don't get too emotionally invested because it might be gone tomorrow just because of time or
Sherman
whatever.
Brothers have a big hit in London with Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which
Right.
will probably come here. It's an enormous hit in London.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting.
How's my part?
It's from years ago. and who's playing it now?
Let me ask one question. I don't know about Brett, but I know the other four of you have not just done leads in series, but really big series. I mean, really gigantic series. Big series that went on and Tony nominated and all the rest of it.
Emmy nominated.
I mean Emmy nominated. Well, we're Tony here. We
Yes,
don't
I know.
mention Emmy. She can get her own show. That kind of working, obviously, where you're going to do 23 episodes or whatever in a row, and then and the learning of lines and all the rest of it, obviously, is such a different discipline
Yes.
from the stage that it must, or is it? You're looking
Similar.
at me, yeah.
Similar.
You're not.
I'm looking at you because you're a great guy.
He can't believe he's sitting here
I
next to
can't believe I'm here.
I took Barney Miller over a couple of other shows because it was done live. It was a sitcom, and I thought I could use my stage experience in front of an audience. And I quickly found out the wrong. That it was still camera. It was still camera, not audience. That if you play to the 400 people there, wrong. You play to the two people on the stage with you and let the camera observe it the same way as if it were a single camera show.
Now, was yours a 3-camera show? It was
Ours
filmed?
was a 4-camera show on tape,
On tape.
but we quickly lost the audience. Only
went.
about the first 4 or 5 shows were taped.
Oh, really?
Right. And
We had notoriously late scripts.
Then I'll disagree with you. Then I mean, the amazing one who I was lucky to work with for 2 years was Carol Burnett, who was able to play to the camera and to the audience at the same time. It was astounding.
There's a certain level of humor that where the audience helps.
Right.
But there's a certain level of humor. I suspect your show would be more like it, where have an audience intrusion, as it were, it would hurt.
well, Wings was an amazing show in many ways because it was so they didn't play audience at all. I mean, it was so internal to the characters, more than almost any other I've seen, and yet it was you really were a small group who were playing.
I suppose, but it is, I think, as Hal is indicating that it's sort of a hybrid in a way. I mean, it's its own discipline, and there are aspects of it that aren't as introspective as pure film. But on the other hand, yeah, you can't be big and this is how I am. This is an indication of how my acting technique is big. You know,
Still
you
has
can't
to
be
be
too
within
because
the
it'll
size.
ruin it. You go beyond the borders of the
TV proscenium
screen.
arch
Yeah.
of the TV camera. That's the danger.
Whereas
Sound plays a big
Taxi
part.
was it had, I mean, between everybody was, almost everybody was an exaggeration of one sort or another. It's interesting that you're working with Rhea again, because from there was Rhea and there was and DeVito, but on the other side, Andy Kaufman, which has to have been insanity,
Right.
you know, insanity, and Carol Kane.
Carol Kane. Well, so they were heightened characters.
They
but,
were.
You know, I think it also depends on how big your set is and how intimate or big your scene is when you do it. You know, there were scenes between Danny and me at certain times that were as intimate as any film I've worked on, and scenes in the taxi garage that felt as large as any proscenium thing I've ever done.
Was
you know?
Judd a kind of anchor for everybody?
Oh
or-
yeah, no question about it. And Danny too. I mean, I think the two of them, you know, even though Danny was that crazy character and everything, you know, that very strong character. Judd was definitely like the everyman of the piece. I mean, he and I think, were the two sanest people, you know, because everybody else was like, everyone else was pretty wild.
Are you sure you didn't choose Bonnie Miller because you got to play the title role?
That'd be the reason.
But by the way, one thing is that I always say I look at TV as my waiter's job because it allows me to do theater during the summer. And the only reason that I've never done Broadway, I mean, thank God, knock wood, everything, I've been employed on TV, and they won't give a 3.5-month contract. The folks at Allergist Wife did and would, and that's why I'm on Broadway.
We'll take a check now, Richard. Thank you.
All right. So we are therefore going to take a short break,
That's right.
and we will be back, unless, of course, there's a vote amongst you, and you decide
Our replacements
there'll be a
are
whole
coming in.
replacement
The tribe has
cast.
spoken.
Yeah, there'll be a whole replacement cast sitting here when you get back.
This is CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
Before we get back to the American Theatre Wing's Working in the Theatre seminar on performance, I would like to remind you that these seminars are only one of the many year-round programs that the Wing undertakes. You're probably familiar with the American Theatre Wing's Tony Awards, given for achievement of excellence in the Broadway theater. But we also have an important grants and scholarship program providing aid off and off Broadway theaters, as well as to promising students to pursue studies in the theater arts. It's a long-established charity dating back from World War I and World War II and our famous Sage Door canteens. All of our programs are designed to reward and promote excellence in the theater, to introduce young people and their families to theater and the magic it unfolds. We take pride in the work we do, remain grateful to our members and everyone whose contributions help make possible the dynamic programs of the American Theatre Wing. Our work is important to the theater and the community, and we are proud to be a part of this exciting industry. And so now, let's return to our panel on performance and our moderator, Mr. Peter Stone.
You'll notice that we're all here. No one has been replaced. We're all right here.
No replacements.
What I'd like to talk about is something that's new to the theater bits in the last couple of years or so, and which paradoxically are two forces working a little bit against each other. It used to be that a show, I mean, for a show to run 2 years, 1,000 performances, which is 2 1/3 years, was unheard of. I mean, you could count them, on fingers of the Diane quintuplets. There were very, very few. There were very, very few thousand performances. That was it. A straight play to run a year was already a big event. Shows broke even. I mean, a straight play could break even in 9 or 10 weeks. A musical could break even in 14 to 17 weeks. And shows didn't run that way. A few did, like, you know, there were the long-running shows, but mostly shows ran, and it was an audience, a loyal theatrical audience. As the finances of the theater changed dramatically, and it became very, very expensive to put them on, and theater tickets, believe it or not, rose much, much slower than the prices to put them on, what it cost to put them on. A show now, a straight play, has to run pretty nearly a year, a straight play to break even, and a musical 2 years. The limit of what a show had to do is about where a show has to go to get even. So new audiences had to be created to make shows run for a long, long time. And they were created through development programs of the producers and other things too. But then it's an audience, still is not exactly a theatrical audience. They're there to see a little more entertainment which is kind of hard on plays or other theatrical endeavors that have more serious intent. So it increases the likelihood that you're going to have replacement actors and stars and so forth because the play so much longer. At the same token, to get a star of to replace or a person of note, you probably in these days have to go to another medium. In this case, mostly television, as 80% of this panel is, had shows. But that television actors have what's called the hiatus. It's the only time they're available. In other words, there's about 4 months when they don't work, where they're not making their series, and that's when they're available to Broadway. So the Broadway shows run longer, and the actors who replace can't stay very long if they're part of a series. And that's becoming a bit of a paradox, I feel. And for those who you want to get, have you, for instance, well, to do a series is obviously a very, very lucrative thing for an actor. I mean, you can make, in the case of Cosby, probably $500 million. But I mean, you can make a great deal of money. God knows he did. Anyway, nevertheless, it's a credit to him that he likes to work.
I was in the old days before they had the.
I know. But still, 100 and something episodes. All right. Now your series is that still a series? Once and Again?
Oh no, I think that was shelved.
That was shelved. But there you'd be, if it were, you'd have a wonderful playing here, but they'd reel you back in.
I suppose, but I've got what has become, I guess, an uncommonly long replacement contract. I'm in it almost a year. I'll be in it for roughly 10 months, I guess, by the time my contract's up, as opposed to a lot of people who replace for...
I did 4 months.
4 months, or in some cases 5 weeks. I know Chicago,
I did 9 months when I first went in.
Okay, you know, but that's not as common among so-called celebrities of note who
and Spin City
is gone the way of...
It's gone.
Yep.
So none of you really is in a series and are going to get reeled in by it. No, but we come across that a lot.
Now, I will tell you what was in my contract if Spin City was picked up, is that I would continue doing the show and I would miss Thursday and Friday night shows on Broadway, go back, they would shoot the day, shoot on Friday night. I would hopefully catch the red eye back and be able to do the matinee on Saturday. That was in my contract.
Yeah.
We lost Reba to a series. She's doing very well in it, but we lost her to the series, which is out there, and she's still doing it. And we're supposed to do a 3-hour special of Annie Get Your Gun, but she's only got a little window of opportunity, as they say, to do it. But let me ask you this. If you were handed a series, and they say, we want you to come out and star in a series, Brad, the only one who didn't come from a series, would you be...
Grab it?
I mean, you love the stage, and that's where you function. Would you grab it?
Oh, sure. Oh,
Right.
sure. Well, first of all, I mean, I think it's a fabulous medium. I have always loved the sitcom as an art form. I think it's very easy to dismiss. I think a lot of people do, and it always amazes me when people are surprised that Stephen can sing and dance and is funny on stage, because, you know, we're all actors. If you're lucky enough to work in a medium where millions of people are suddenly going to know your face and know who you are, that's a blessing. It doesn't mean that that's the only thing you can do.
No.
So sure,
I would become a hiatus person.
Sure. But I would love to have the opportunity
But
to
I always
work.
think it depends on the writing. You know,
Sure.
I mean, there are certain series that you wouldn't want to go near even if you were desperate for a job because it could hurt your next job.
And I gotta
Because it'll
tell
be
you,
on and off right away
I got to tell you, it's getting harder and harder
to find good
to
stuff.
find good stuff.
Betty Davis was after. They were after Betty Davis for years and years to do a series, and she didn't want to do one. But they paid her a great many dollars to do a pilot. So she would go through the stack of scripts that she got, choose the one that was the worst.
Like
I know, exactly. And she would choose the ones that had no chance whatsoever, get her money, and the series never happened. And so she could go on. Yeah.
Nowadays, unfortunately, in television, it's become art by committee. The
Yeah.
networks and the studios are right there, writing and rewriting. Everybody's, and it's. I don't know that I would rush back to do it.
But boy, if you're on a good show, I mean, Mad About You.
If you find
I thought Mad About You was like written by young Herb Gardners and Neil Simon. It was so cleverly written. Sometimes there was one that took place in the bathroom. The whole show. It was like a one-act play.
Do we think Rob Lowe's crazy?
Yes.
Yes.
I do.
A show of
Definitely.
hands. Anyway.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's
He's
ridiculous.
gonna. Yeah. All right.
Ridiculous.
Would
You think they take an older man? No.
would you go for a great series?
I'd love to do a good hour series.
A dramatic series.
A good dramatic series. I
Richard,
don't
would
know
you
that
go
I-
for a series?
Oh yeah.
In a minute.
In a minute. If it's good.
If it's good, that's the hard
Absolutely.
thing.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, absolutely. But I will tell you this: I'm a new father, and I think sitcoms should only be acted by parents because the hours are livable
Yeah.
and short. Doing an hour series, that's the hardest work in the business. It's just long, long days, and you never see your family or get to do anything.
No.
Yeah, if you have to get, put
If
on
you're in a lot
makeup
of it.
every day and live in a trailer,
Yeah.
Stephen, you've been
Stuff.
through a couple of series.
I'm looking to the roller derby for my next
That's
the
good.
next area that I conquer.
But writing, tell us for a second. You're a writer now.
Well, I'm not. I write.
Well, that's it.
I try to write.
If there's any other definition, I don't know of it.
Well,
Member of the guild.
a few years ago, I decided that since the shelf lives of many sitcom actors are brief, that I would try to make employment for myself by branching out. And so I started writing, and I adapted a couple of short stories that were made into Outer Limits episodes and all that stuff, and actually tried directing, which was mortifying but educational. And then I wrote something that was made into a TV movie for Showtime called Clubland with Alan Alda and myself playing father and son talent agents in the 50s. And it was a very gratifying experience, and it got made, and it was wonderful. I mean, it wasn't, it wasn't Sterling Silliphant, it wasn't, brilliantly written, but I mean, hell, it got made, and that's basically what I was doing it for. And so I'm endeavoring to do that as well as act. It's
But
purely
not for the
mercenary.
theater, not for the stage.
You know what the reality is, that the theater is incredibly difficult, and in a way, TV is. The bar has
There's
been
so
lowered
much more
sufficiently
up-
to allow. I mean, maybe I'm shooting myself in the foot, but it seems easier. At
Well,
least
there's
for
so
me
much
to write
more
for
of it.
product.
I mean,
Yeah.
my God,
right.
you've not only got
more
now
media.
instead of 3 networks, you have 6,
Right.
and you have cable now with making original movies on at least 6 cable channels.
And you can get it made. And
Yes.
the idea of writing a play, and of course, when I was young, and I would fantasize about writing a play or something like that. The reality is that it's you have to answer to an audience in the flesh, and it's a lot more daunting. And in a way, there's a pedigree that is again more frightening for me as an
You're
aspiring
still
writer.
not convincing me.
All right, I'll write
Try
for the
it.
theater.
I will say this.
Greatness
that
thrust upon me.
I love it when people still do write for the theater, a la Kenny Lonergan, who has made a great fortune in doing movies, and he still comes back to the
Neil
theater.
LaBute,
And Neil LaBute. It's
And then there are those people who've never done anything else, like Edward Albee and others, who, and Arthur Miller, basically, and Tennessee, who, and we have those people with us now still, who write only for the stage.
Tony Kushner, I guess, but I just think it's an admirable thing. It's a different world now because they do want products so much that they'll throw all kinds of money at you, and it's hard to turn that down. So when they do, it's very seductive. So when they can split their time, I think it's an admirable thing.
Peter,
I really do.
You write for the theater.
I do. Now, I mean, I spent a lot of. I used to write a lot for film in between, but my interest was always the theater. But I chose the musical theater because I liked it. I had my first break. I got asked to do a musical as the first thing I would ever have on Broadway. This was 40 years ago, but and it happened to be a musical, and it was Alfred Drake, whom I admired enormously, and it was based on a play by Jean-Paul Sartre, which I had seen when I lived in Paris, and it was just one of those things. But having gone through the process of a musical, I really became involved in it. I found that at that time, realism was far more rampant on Broadway than in the theater, let's just say, than it is even now, naturalism, as it was called. And I was bored with naturalism. I found it very, very narrow, and I thought the audience was bored by it, too. I didn't think they wanted to see fourth wall, you know, the fourth wall torn down and you're eavesdropping on somebody's life. And the musical restored 3 of Aristotle's 6 properties of theater. It wasn't just plot, character, and theme, but it was also spectacle, movement, as is dance, and music, and poetry. And the musical restored all that, and that interested me, and I like it, and I like doing it. And I'm also not the best writer in the world, but I am a very good musical book writer, and that also changed everything. So I like doing it.
But it's so hard nowadays because the consequences of a bad musical cost millions. So many
could hurt you forever. As a young writer,
and to make it have it produced is so difficult nowadays.
It is difficult, and there's a great shortage of producers, of really good producers. You're going to see in a little bit. You're going to see probably the last of the really great independent producers who was received a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Tonys this last year, and unfortunately there wasn't time to show it, and who died just a couple of weeks later. There are not producers like that anymore. There are more organizations, full service organizations, and they're looking on the road. They looked at, and they're looking at things that didn't used to matter much, and now do a lot. It made it harder. There's no question, but. There you are. Nice question. Thank you.
There's a certain lowest common denominator appeal, I think, at this point, because it is the money. So it is, how many people would
Hairspray is an enormous hit. Nobody's seen it yet. It's an enormous hit. The New York Times reviewed it in the magazine section. I don't know what Ben Brantley's going to do. They reviewed it 5 weeks before it opened, called it a hit, called the songs wonderful, called the show wonderful, they reviewed it. It's an enormous hit. But it's a hit for a certain audience, and that audience, I think, is limitless. Where there are certain shows, like, for instance, Lion King, which will never close, ever, because new generations of kids, I mean, it just has to run 20 years at a time, and a new generation. Right. And it deserves to run. She's a genius. Julie Taymor is a genius, and that show is a revelation. And the producer is going to run forever because it's fun. But there are certain shows that are just energetic. I mean, Mamma Mia is an energetic show. I mean, it doesn't have a lot to offer except for people who used to like ABBA and dance in the aisles. But that's not theater. Right. It's something, but it isn't theater. Sure.
I mean, in a way, just to... the reason why I guess I was so intimidated to write for the theater is because I hold it in really high regard, and I'm not sure that... I'd be afraid to take on something... I'm not sure I have the depth or the daring to...
You don't.
Well, I don't. Wow. That's been confirmed by my fellow panelists.
We know each other a long
That's
time.
why the roller derby, my friends,
the roller derby sounds
is the wave of the future.
Well, oddly enough...
I'm talking the old big four-wheel skates.
I'm sorry.
Not that inline crap.
Starlight Express.
They did it, and it didn't work. It didn't work. They made a musical, which I rather admired its energy, and but it didn't work. It's a big hit in London, maybe still running. But
Are you saying
there's roller
that you don't
skates.
have to be as good writing for television?
No, I don't think that's true. I think Aaron
I think
Sorkin,
that's what you're saying.
Aaron Sorkin, who writes for The West Wing, You don't write better than that. I mean, that's as good as you have to write ever.
You know, more people
know.
sit in their chairs at home watching television than they do, unfortunately,
Yeah.
in the theater, and that's just the
So
way
the
it
stakes
is.
are
And
higher.
Aaron Sorkin, he
Financial
started in the
stakes are
theater.
higher.
He started in the theater. It was one
Sure.
basic play, and then he went and made it into a better movie than it was a play. And then, but there's another thing, and then I think the Tony people have to understand when they say we're not getting the ratings that the Oscars and the Emmys get. New York is very much a theatrical center. There's no place in the, yes, there's a very vibrant small in Chicago. It's quite good in Seattle, and there's some in San Diego and so forth. But I mean, when you walk up Times Square and you see 30 theaters with their lights all on, and I mean, there's so you have a Tony Award to give awards to actors that the people out there in the country who watch television have never seen before. Now, it's a very much. I hate to say it, it's parochial in a way. It's part of our. It's a New York thing more than anything
I'm
else.
going to say something that I think you'll disagree with.
No, I promise I'll agree.
No, you won't. I think the theater in L.A. is quite great.
There's just very little of it.
That's correct. Or what there are, they're not great physical theaters.
No.
There are movie palaces. There are great theater houses here on Broadway, and therefore plays come into them. They are perfect.
But it has to do with the theater going public there.
Yeah.
The
And
venues
there
are
was no
small
audience.
and kind of cool.
And there was no
People
audience.
don't
Yeah,
want
but people
to
don't
go.
But I'll tell you, I see a lot of theater. They just did a production of not the Price, After the Fall. It's fantastic. Fantastic.
I mean, I saw a production of The Blood Knot with Don Cheadle. This was like about 6 years ago. And I mean, it was incredible. It was incredible. Nobody was in the audience.
Well,
I mean,
part of,
six
part
people
of the
watching
tragedy
this,
in terms
and
of
I
actors
couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was so brilliant.
is the 3,000 miles. In England, in France, in other major countries, film and theater are in the same city.
That's right.
And actors can make movies in the day and play on the stage at night. Here, they relocate their families, everything else. And Brando
it's in your
went,
life.
Paul Newman went, Robert Redford, they went. And they don't come back because they can't. Once in a while, Henry Fonda would come back occasionally, which was terrific. But mostly, film people who are really well known and successful don't come back, except later on, because they want to, but not because they need to or have to or anything else. So there is that problem that the theater and the film is so widely separated geographically that it makes it very hard.
And also because the government isn't recognizing theatrical endeavors the way it should or did. It's the National Endowment for the Arts, and it's being marginalized, and it's certainly in schools, and it's becoming less and less important in a sense.
But I think that's changing. I mean, I think that certainly 10 years ago, Broadway seemed much more dead than it does now.
Yes.
And 15 years ago, no question about it, it felt completely dead.
I have to say that the 8 plays that were nominated, the 4 straight plays, the 4 revivals, and the 4 new plays this season, all 8 of them were quite terrific.
Yeah.
They really were good. I
Which
can't
was
say that
not
about the
true.
musicals.
Yeah, which was- yeah, exactly.
I can't say that about the musicals. They weren't. But the straight plays. So I think it's getting to be a healthier place for what we call straight plays, which even saying it means that the musical is primary. Otherwise, you'd say plays. You wouldn't have to say straight plays. But I think that's becoming a stronger.
But you see the huge lines for matinees and evening at TGF on Broadway. People want to go to the theater.
Yes.
They
Yeah, they
want to
do.
see the
No, I
live
have a
theater.
question. Is The Goat considered a hit?
It's
Or
running.
financial? Well, it's closing soon.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, they're thinking about quite an interesting replacement. I don't know whether they're making it, but I
Glenn
know
Close?
that
Glenn Close?
Pulley.
I heard.
John Pulley.
yeah, no, they're. I just heard yesterday that the actress, but it wasn't Glenn Close, but it was somebody who might replace
Mercedes?
Mercedes. I think it's a wonderful play, and I really do like it. But imagine a play as outré as that one is, as controversial, and as strange as that play is to have run this length of time.
That's right.
On Broadway.
On Broadway, is
I guess
already.
there's no national tour.
I mean, had it been. Well, it would have
In the
been good.
Midwest,
Yes,
exactly.
yes.
And New
The
Zealand.
Bible Belt.
You're right. New Zealand and the Midwest are both very big.
They couldn't catch the goat.
In any of the farming
And in Hades.
areas, it would have been.
Farmers from all over will be bringing
Would be
it.
well, not to spoil it for anybody, but we don't exactly see a live one. Anyway,
I'd like to know where each one of you came from before you came here. What was your background? Did you go to theater school? Did you...
I grew up outside of Washington, D.C., and had a very normal, did shows in school, community theater. Went to Boston University for 4 years, got a BFA in acting, moved to the city, started waiting tables, auditioning. Couldn't have been more classic in that respect.
What was your first show?
My first show, my first equity job was up in Worcester, Mass, doing a production of Tomfoolery. And then I came back from that. I went to an open call for Aspects of Love, the Andrew Lloyd Webber show in 1990, and got cast as a swing in Aspects of Love, and went from waiting tables at Charlie's on 45th Street
to eating
exactly to having a reservation after the show.
Just stiffing the waiters.
Making fun of the waiters. As Richard Greenberg's line, excuse me,
Exactly.
I mean waiter. Yeah, right.
Yes, totally.
Yeah. Richard, how about you?
Well, I was supposed to go to law school. My dad's best friend said, try New York for a year because that's what you really want to do. I was here for 4.5 years, then went to Second City for another 4.5 years. And so I was on stage. That was my Yale Drama School, but for
He
comedy.
wasn't your dad's best friend. He was your best
You're
friend.
right. You're telling me. And then went out to L.A. And I've actually done, believe it or not, 7 TV series. So and it's unbelievable. But every summer I would go and do a play. I'd been at the Guthrie. I've been at Williamstown, did North Carolina, and I'm all over. I'd make sure I do at least one play a year. So that's why I keep doing theater.
Yeah. I was a professional musician. I never set foot on
An
the stage.
instrumentalist? Or?
I never set foot on a stage till my middle 20s.
What was your instrument?
I was reed man, saxophone, clarinet. I actually
No kidding.
I played with Ray McKinley and Bobby Sherwood and all those bands. You remember these names?
Yes, I
they
do.
Don't.
No.
And I never had the slightest interest in the theater.
Until what?
In the Army. I graduated college and I did my Army duty. And in the Army, I was singing. That I did do. I used to sing with the bands. And in the Army, I started doing soldier shows, and singing basically. But then they would give me a sketch and say, "Okay, you're playing the father in the sketch." And I'd come off and say, "That was a very comfortable place to be. That was nice. I ought to try that again."
They reacted. They did everything. They
So when
applauded.
I got out of the Army, I used my GI Bill and went to the American Theater Wing
No.
and studied there and started auditioning. And
Did your family approve
my family approved of my acting.
of your going into
the theater?
Yeah. Because I mean, a musician can make a living, but an actor?
They weren't even nuts about my being a musician. I was supposed to be an accountant or
An
something.
accountant, right. What about you?
In my family, okay, my family's business, I grew up with a dancing school in our backyard. We had 200 students between the ages of 2 and 80, including the nuns who came over for stretch classes. Okay? We also had a beauty shop out of our kitchen and art classes going on upstairs.
Genuflecting takes a great deal. Takes a great deal of stretching. It's hard.
So I grew up in a very theatrical family, 6 brothers and sisters. My oldest sister was in all the college plays, and every time they needed any kid in Chicago for any theatrical thing, they'd call our dancing school. So I did The King and I like 4 times as a kid, and all the other stuff. Well, I got very involved with Chicago theater, because Chicago's got a great theater system, and one day a friend of mine that I'd known when I was a sophomore in high school and had done a play with him, he called me when I was a senior. He said, "I've written a show. It may never get off the ground. It's about the kids I went to high school with. I want you to play a part." So I was in the original company of Grease. So I created the role of Marty, and when the show went to Broadway, I didn't go, as I said before, because I was just starting college. But then when the national company came up, I decided I was a college student in the morning and a theatrical equity card carrier by the afternoon, and that just started a million other things, and living in New York and then going off to LA to do all the stuff that I've done since then. And so 6 Broadway shows later. So.
Now, Stephen, did you start out with another interest in life when you was a young person?
Well, actually, when I was a child, I did commercials. I did several commercials that ran, and
where are you
my
from?
parents pocketed the money. I'm from Queens. and my father was a talent agent who managed comics and singers in the Borscht Belt. My mom was a nightclub singer where she was a Copa girl and all this
Born
stuff.
to the purple.
More or less, but they weren't. They didn't really encourage me, nor did they discourage me. But I ended up doing commercials, and then I went to the High School of Performing Arts And then I went to SUNY Purchase. Purchase is upstate New York, which is kind of
They
a
have a
liberal
great
Juilliard,
theater, by
great
the way.
theater. And then, and my first theater job after college was with a company called the Mirror Repertory Company, which is short-lived, but it had about 30 actors in it, and Geraldine Page was the artist in residence.
I remember that.
And so we did Paradise Lost, and we did Rain, and we did this chestnut of a play called The Inheritors.
Oh,
you
I
know,
wrote
and,
that. No,
yeah.
It was the word chestnut.
Chestnut.
Got me, yeah.
And
Everything
so
was a good role for Geraldine.
Yeah.
Well,
That's right.
But she, and so she was my
Someone
first. She was. I mean, that was my first professional theater experience, and she was, in a way, she's not spoken about enough nowadays. I think she passed away maybe.
I think she was one of
10
the
years
great,
ago.
one of the
Amazing.
great actors of the American stage, no question. Right in the tradition of Le Gallienne.
Exactly. Yeah. She was a wonderful actress,
Cornell.
incredibly imaginative and
What was the play? Oh, Agnes of God. I saw her in Agnes of God. And I went to Catholic school, for 13 years of my life, kindergarten through 12th grade. I've never seen a person be more of a nun on stage. I mean, I'm talking about genuflecting. Oh, my gosh. I mean, she was extraordinary.
How do they get the jobs? Through a casting agent? Or,
The recent one we have now?
Yeah,
Oh,
in general.
Oh, no, they get called.
You get a call. I just got they asked me to do this. I had never seen the play. I did Tale of the Allergist's Wife. I
Is
said
it a
it's the
casting
worst
agent
time.
or a
They
theatrical
called
agent?
my agent, and
They call your agent?
They call your agent.
Right.
I read it, and it was like the worst time for me to come and do something because I was doing another job. But I read the script, and I went, I have to do this because this is such a great part for me. So you push other things aside and somehow make it all work.
The only reason I auditioned for this, I just to sing Lynn Meadows' praises again, I auditioned about 8 years ago for a play called The Loman Family Picnic that she directed. Now, this is how nurturing Lynn Meadow can be. I auditioned for her, and she worked with me for an hour. And then she sent me home and said, come back tomorrow, and let's see how you do. So, I mean, it's like she wants you to do well. She wants to see the best. Needless to say, I didn't get it, but
You should have stayed.
But I was in Washington when they were auditioning for this, because I did have to audition. And when they said an audition with Lynn Meadow, it's like a seminar. Sure, I'll come in and I'll do it. And I thought I was all wrong for the part. I thought I was too young, everything like that. I got it, but...
How do you feel about auditioning?
Pardon me?
How do you feel about auditions, all of you?
Well, I think, for instance, writers get very upset with some actors who are recognized as stars because they say, oh, why don't audition? But it's not about auditioning. It's about reading because the character has certain qualities that you just want to see whether the match is there. Also, you have to match the other castings there.
I love to audition.
But so
I love to
reading,
audition.
but I don't
Yeah,
call
I
it
feel
auditioning.
sometimes it's the only 10 minutes that you have that part. You know
That's
what I mean?
true.
You have to-
That's an interesting way.
So you gotta do it.
A lot of times, especially because I like doing theater, and you got a little audience there, I work hard, I study the role, and I go, hey, look, I get to act, because unlike a writer or an artist, you can't just sit in your bedroom and create. You got to do it in front of people, and all of a sudden...
I had to audition for Chicago. They called me. I remember this was in March. They called and said, Annie Ranking's leaving Chicago. When was the last time you danced? Now, I had a 15-month-old baby home. I said, oh, my gosh, I haven't danced. I haven't had my legs up in the air except for childbirth and a good weekend in about 5 years. so I said, I better get my ass back in dance class. And even though I had trained as a dancer and grew up dancing my whole life, I went to class. And I was a little creaky at first, but I had like 10 days before I came to see the show. I saw the show and I went, oh my gosh, I have got to do this part. So I went to my first audition. I was very LA, the way I was dressed. My hair was half up, half down. I had biker shorts. I had little jazz shoes and everything. And Walter Bobby said, okay, I want you to work another 2 weeks on this. And I went, okay. I went home. I called the producers the next day. I said, I want to prove to you that I can do this part. What do I have to do? And they said, well, can you work with somebody? I said, and I said to them, is there somebody in LA who can teach me the Fosse technique? And they said, we really don't have anybody who's doing that, but maybe you can find someone. So I rented Cabaret and all that jazz, and in the first 5 minutes of all that jazz, I saw that Catherine Dobie, who was Bob Fosse's assistant, was in the, and I knew her. I called her, I said, Catherine, would you help me? We watched, and she was like, she was like a prison matron. I mean, she was like so hard on me. She said, "What did you wear?" And I told her, she said, "No, it's fussy. You wear, fishnet hose, and you have a French cut leotard, and you do eye makeup, and you do this,
and can you make this gesture?
And can you do this?" Seriously, that's so funny you said that, because that's really true. She said, "Your fingers have to be exactly perfectly apart, and get that shoulder,
on your derby, on your hat."
And she like made me crazy. But I went in there 2 weeks later, and I aced the audition with her help. So sometimes it just takes that extra homework and that extra push and that extra kind of commitment to doing something like that.
But the whole idea of wanting a part and working for it is really something. I think that a lot of people, a lot of actors feel that it's like their egos being challenged in some way. But my goodness, it's
agents
or your
do
status,
that. Agents do that. They won't let you go and audition. No. If you go and audition,
it's a strange game.
It is a strange game, and I keep telling agents, no, I want to go.
That's the way to lose it.
Every time I audition for a part, I get it.
Something else, I'll go in and I'll ask to audition for the casting agent before I meet the producers, so that I feel what it's like out loud. They're going to give me some notes because they've all obviously talked to the powers that be and what they want. And so I'll get as many hints as I can. And,
see, but it's so different in L.A. than it is in New York, because in New York you feel like everybody's got their job that they do, and everybody wants to do well, and it's sort of a community effort, and the people will work with you. In L.A., because you audition a certain way, and it's like good, bad. It's almost like people have remote controls. Right. It's just a completely different mindset.
And there's
so you
15
get used
people
to.
out there,
all
with a vote.
What
in
was
the dark.
Brad started out as a swing in the producers, but how did you audition for that?
Well, I just flew in. I mean, I had been doing Jekyll and Hyde on Broadway forever, and they'd give me a leave of absence, and I was playing Santa Claus for Radio City in Branson, Missouri. And I flew in on my day off because they were looking for a standby for Nathan. And I thought, well, this is an extraordinary opportunity to be a part of this project in whatever way possible. So I flew in, and I read, and I sang, and I flew back to Branson the next day and got the call and got the job. And it all
by the way, one small chapter that was cut out in your description of how you got the job is that you were also standby for
Franz,
right, who later was excised. That actor was excised.
Right. Brad's like the Black Widow. He's the Black Widow of Broadway. Look out! Everybody who studies gets sick.
Well, we are going to.
This is not mine.
We are going to. We're going to stop. When you auditioned, did you sing "This Is the Moment"? Anyway, we are going to stop. We're going to stop here for a treat, actually, something that's quite terrific, which Isabel is going to tell you about.
Before we say goodbye, and thanks to this marvelous panel, these wonderful people, we have a special treat. We're going to show you the special Tony Awards for Lifetime Achievement to Robert Whitehead and Julie Harris. This ceremony preceded the 2002 Tony Awards telecast and has never before been televised. And so, now, this special ceremony.
And now, to present our first Tony Award, he has 2 shows presently running on Broadway. He has a new play about to go into rehearsal this summer, and is one of the most produced playwrights of the past half-century. He's often referred to as America's greatest living playwright. Ladies and gentlemen, the esteemed Arthur Miller.
For almost 50 years now, a certain gentleman has occupied a large space at the very top of New York theater life. A man of taste, honest to a fault, with a profound love of theater and respect for its artists. Incredibly enough, he's a producer. Robert Whitehead was the visionary who really created the theater in Lincoln Center, but there isn't time for more than a brief sampling of his credits. He produced Medea on Broadway, The Member of the Wedding, The Visit, Bus Stop, The Skin of Our Teeth, The Prime of Miss Brodie, Pinter's Betrayal, Old Times, and No Man's Land, Orpheus Descending, The Time of the Cuckoo, A Man for All Seasons, Masterclass, A Touch of the Poet, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, and 8 of my plays. Among his stars have been Judith Anderson, Julie Harris and Ethel Waters, Alfred Lunt and Lynn Fontaine, John Gielgud, Lillian Gish, Kim Stanley, Helen Hayes, Ina Clare, Katharine Hepburn, Davy Burns, Jessica Tandy and Hume Cronin, and Jason Robards, and Mrs. Whitehead, normally called Zoe Caldwell. Enough for two Lifetime Awards from an awed and grateful profession to the undisputed King of the Hill, Robert Whitehead.
I must tell you, Arthur said, "How can I give you this award if you're going to be carrying a cane?" I said, "Well, I'll give you back the cane if you let me have the award." All of this goes back so far, so dense in terms of time, experiences that we've had together. It's, I said to someone in the car, what was that show in the music hall in which they were shooting arrows all the time? Does anybody know? Who was the big bolt?
Errol Flynn.
Errol Flynn. I said this all goes back to the time that Errol Flynn was shooting arrows in Radio City Music Hall. So it's a long time ago, and in that time, I learned and was enriched and came to understand the theater in a way I would never, ever be able to talk about if it wasn't for my friend Arthur Miller. And so because of that, I'm going to give him back this award and take the cane. I think it's time we stop. I can only say to have been honored by this award, to have had it even recognized, has touched me more than I can ever put in the words. This room is full of people I've worked with. People who worked on shows with me and have also taught me a great deal. And if I started to going through those names, I would break down in tears. I can only tell you, I'm grateful, and I thank you all so much for including me here this evening. Good night.
The artist I'm about to introduce joined our theater family as a young actress with Joseph Papp's New York Shakespeare Festival. This past summer, she mesmerized audiences in George Wolfe's Shakespeare Festival production of The Seagull, filling Central Park with enthusiastic young theatergoers who camped out every night to get tickets. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to present the gigantically talented Miss Meryl Streep.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The term overnight sensation is heard from time to time in our unpredictable business. But for Julie Harris in 1950, it was anything but unpredictable. In the role of the 12-year-old Frankie Adams in A Member of the Wedding, Julie Harris became the quintessential Star is Born. If I keep on growing like this until I'm 21, Frankie says in the play, I figure I'll be nearly 10 feet tall. That line became prophetic because Julie Harris became a towering presence in the world of the theater. And through the years, she's played a succession of dazzling roles. She was the first Sally Bowles in I Am a Camera, for which she received her first Tony Award. Then came 4 more Tonys, St. Joan in The Lark, 40 Carats, The Last of Mrs. Lincoln, and in 1976, her triumph as Emily Dickinson in The Belle of Amherst. And she is still, her beautiful art continues unabated with 5 additional Tony nominations. And 2 years ago, she embarked on a silver anniversary tour, a national tour of The Belle of Amherst. Julie Harris has been an inspiration to me and to every actress who aspires to a life in acting. It's my great honor and joy to present this special Tony Lifetime Achievement Award to the belle of the American theater, our beloved Julie Harris.
I love you all, and I'm home. Thank you.
It was a great treat to see that, and because both of them were such dear people, Julie still is, and of course, but we'll never see the likes of, I fear, you know, of the producer, of such a producer again. You've all been very, very kind to put up with us. We really appreciated your participation. I couldn't be happier than to have 5 artists of this quality surrounding me. If I were selected, you'd all get the parts. And it's just another... we're actually talking about that. Anyway, but the fact is that it's just another example of the Wing bringing theater to people who will be enriched by it, and by seeing this sort of thing, those whole generations who might start to work the way all of these people have started to work. So we thank Isabel, we thank the Wing, we thank you, and thank you for coming.
And this seminar.